What's going on, guys? JD at JD's Custom Buggies. What's going on, guys? JD at JD's Custom Buggies. So we skipped a couple of steps because I believe the last video we did on this was on the roll cage, and it's been just a busy life. I spent 2 weeks up in Tennessee to get a lot of work done. I apologize, I haven't updated any information or videos on that yet. And when we got back here, we had basically the chassis painted, so it was a matter of just getting it slapped together. We have a race this coming weekend. This coming weekend will be like June 21st, 22nd. We have an upcoming race this weekend at Dade City Motocross. So the original plan was that this buggy needed to be done for that race, which will be this coming weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I got a phone call last night after corresponding with the guy, and it turns out his father's not doing well and he's leaving town for Idaho. He didn't realize it was falling on the same weekend. So I'm not going to fault him for that. Family comes first. But that being said, it's done. It's out of the way. On to the next project. So now that we have it all together, we'll just do kind of a walk around and a walkthrough and explain to you as best I can as what we have accomplished here. So I will probably refer you back to a bunch of videos because this buggy, as I stated in the previous video on this build, what we ended up doing was bait and switch kind of deal, where he brought me a Trailmaster XRS and it was in rough shape, and I happen to have a Trailmaster XRS outside that used to be my niece's MBX buggy. So we figured that most of the mods had already been done to this frame, so we just kind of switched them. I kept his, I'll do something with his later, and this just seemed to be the quickest route to go, which is why we went this way. So, first thing, we'll talk about the shocks. The shocks have all been swapped out, and these are the shocks that were on the buggy before, but they're all Yamaha Blaster shocks, all right? They're about 14.5 inches long, but the Yamaha Blaster shock has always been a popular buggy swap. Couple issues with doing that is that the bounce on the Blaster shocks are very wide. So if you are gonna upgrade or swap over your stock shocks for a Blaster shock, you'll have to take that into consideration and widen your shock mounts. The other thing is they're probably a hair longer than most of the shocks that come stock in the buggy. So just slapping them in will kind of wreak havoc as far as the geometry and whatnot and the way it's set up. And with the front, we're talking about the A-arm and the strut angle and the A-arm angle. You can't just slap a longer shock in there because you want your arms to be pretty much at the same angle, and by doing that, it kind of changes things. In the rear, you have dog bones to worry about. By putting a longer shock in the swing arm, the dog bone lengths on this particular buggy need to be at a certain angle, otherwise the swing arm can risk hyperextending and kind of screw up your day there. So on any strut buggy like this, Hammerhead, maybe an American Sportworks Carbide, Trailmaster, stuff like that, you're going to have to kind of do your due diligence and relocate stuff. The other thing that is different, and I believe Trailmaster's offering this now on their newer buggies, but years ago when the Trailmaster Blazer came out, it was meant to compete with like maybe and they may or may not admit this or whatnot. I'm just taking my liberties in my opinion. But in 2014, the Hammerhead Platinum came out, and the Platinum had a wider stance. It had longer A-arms, had different tie rod sleeves and whatnot, and it was to give it a wider, more stable stance so they could put longer shocks on it. That was one of the first things that I kind of looked to as far as wanting to be able to do that with just your typical short-armed buggy. So the Blazer had come out, I think a year or two after that, came up with the same setup, same length arms, wider stance. So I had ordered early on, as soon as they were available, the Blazer arms to widen the stance on the buggy. So that was done previously in its previous incarnation. Along with that, as far as and like I said, we can refer back to a previous video because I did a walk around on this buggy when it was the 13 and it was my niece's. And the main focus on the video was the shocks. So for one, I lopped off the original shop mount arms and cross members and bent and installed another piece of tubing, and then basically put wider shock mounts on it. Basically with the lower arms, I kind of moved the shock inboard to where the original mount was. You can see the original mount hole was over here, and what I did was kind of put it a little further inboard, and that's so the shock would actually work and get some, get some leverage on it to actually make the shock articulate. Like I said, that was all, we've already been through that, so this is kind of review. What we did with this was took all the parts off that I felt weren't good. We ended up sandblasting the arms, replacing the bushings. We put a new rack and pinion on it, new steering shaft on it, new steering wheel, all the stuff that was wore out from either racing or from sitting outside for a while. We just put all new. The pedals, we sandblasted them, repainted them, put new bushings in them. It previously had a slide rod kit, so we used the same slide rod apparatus, cleaned it up, sandblasted, repainted. All new brake lines, calipers. Seats have been changed. Seats were changed to, I believe these are actually Trailmaster Blazer seats. I think that they got away from their two-piece seat with the headrest on the XRS and XRX models, and I think they're using these seats on all the models now. The other big thing was the roll cage, which previous video we looked at it being built. So we got the roll cage done. Advantages of having a welded cage besides the protection, the rollover protection and whatnot, is I believe that it makes the chassis a lot more rigid. It allows the rest of the chassis not to give away in weak spots. I had that issue with my Yerk dog when I ran the stock bolt-on cage. So the other nice thing about what I like about welded cage, you're not chasing rattles because welded cages don't rattle. So, loose bolts on a cage, sometimes, a couple threads out and all of a sudden you hear a rattle from somewhere, you're chasing it down, trying to look for it. Welded cage is the way to go. If you can do it, if not, buy a buggy from me and you can do it. As far as the motor, and because of the lack of space, I'm gonna roll this up a little bit. So the motor he wanted reverse, so if he's not racing, that he can just kind of cruise and whatnot. So we started off with the stock motor that's got forward, neutral, and reverse in it. As far as the mods to the motor, the whole top end is different. What I did was tear the motor down. It's got a new cam chain in it. Cam chains are very easy to replace in these motors. You don't have to split the cases, which is nice. So you can basically take off an access paddle behind your variator and fish your old cam chain out and put a new one in. So one really, really cool thing about this motor. If they did that with all motors, it'd be kind of cool too. So new cam chain, oil pump chain. That's a given. I do that on all my motors. Top end, we have 61 millimeter drop in. 61 millimeter drop-ins will drop in a Trailmaster 150 motor, which also would mean that it drops in a Hammerhead 150 the carbide 150 because they're identical. In fact, if you own a Polaris Ranger 150 or an Ace 150, they're identical motors also. This is the exact same motor that you'll find in the Polaris models. And why? Because Polaris back in 2015 acquired Hammerhead. And the reason why they did that, if you notice, all of a sudden instead of 170s and 200s, they were coming out with a couple 150 models. It's because they borrowed all the Hammerhead parts for it. So what we have is basically 61mm drop-in kit, SSPG 61mm head. She's been massaged a little bit. I did a little porting work on it, and that's just to help the flow and the breathing better. Got our slide card kit on there using a genuine Mikuni VM26606, velocity stack, unifilter with an outerwear. I run an outerwear because I'm lazy and I don't oil my filter. I'm not telling you not to oil your filter. I'm just saying that if I blow my motor up, I won't be that sad about it and I can rebuild it fairly quickly. As far as general people, I would definitely recommend oiling filter and adding an outerwear. It would also help. What the outerwear does is it's added dust protection and it's water resistant. So if you are riding out in the rain or whatnot, it's not waterproof, it's just water resistant. If it was waterproof, it wouldn't be breathable, but it will allow water just to roll off the filter instead of kind of soaking into it. The 101 octane high torque starter on there. The vent tubes and all the color match, we use Helix lines. I use the Fly Racing vent tubes on there for the valve cover. On every MBX buggy, we basically put a longer vent tube to drape down the back, and the reason for that was, and it actually happened in this buggy in a previous life, is that the buggy rolls over. What we don't want is we don't want the vent tube basically anywhere near the driver, because hot oil does come out of there, and it happened to my niece. She rolled over before any of us knew any better. She was actually on her lid, and there was hot oil pouring down the back of her neck. So what we did as a rule is that we have now these oil lines and whatnot come out the back of the motor, pointing down. If by any chance it does flip, that the oil, because the line's pointing down, is now pointing up, will slow the flow of oil coming out of it, and it's nowhere near the driver. And that's the most important thing. As far as the wheels and tires, these are basically the same wheels and tires that she was running. We have DWT Blue Label wheels, very light aluminum. They are like the recreational wheel that DWT uses, but if you're looking for a weight reduction, these wheels are the way to go. They are really light. I had put, instead of using the standard, usually use 10-inch wheels in the back, I ended up using 8s on this because I had put this thing on a diet when my niece was in it. I did a little experimenting and changed the swing arm, the axle, and put a non-reverse motor in it, just a straight up motor, and it weighed in at 513 pounds. With this motor and steel wheels and a passenger seat, after taking the passenger seat out, swapping the wheels and tires, and swapping the motor setup in the back and the swing arm and everything, we actually got it down to 4 1/4, which was pretty impressive. I wasn't looking for that much weight loss. I'm sure between the cage, having an extra seat, going back to the old system with the motor and everything, we're probably back around the 500-pound range. I wouldn't doubt it. Tire-wise, I want to say they're Sedonas, because yep, the Sedona, they're basically 20-11/8 on the back, and then ITP Old Shot 22 7/10s on the front. So everything fires right up. As far as the wiring is concerned, I know you've seen some of my videos probably with wiring and whatnot. So we put a project box here. It's a sealed project box. Looking for a clean place to mount it, and my whole thing is if I got to open the box and work on stuff, I want it right in front of my face. I don't want to have to dig or have my hand go, be a contortionist to get to where, what I got to fix. So basically it's very simple, simply wired. We have a key switch, ran the wires back to this box, and this box here it doesn't contain a battery on this box. We actually put a conventional maintenance-free battery in there for firepower. But basically in here we have our rectifier mounted, and then the rest of our wiring, the basics of all the wiring going to where they got to go, and the starter solenoid is all in here. So it's very clean. You open up the box, just some wiring, a fuse, starter solenoid. Rectifiers mounted outside because rectifiers If you look at your stock buggy, they're mounted outside the box also because they give off heat as they're charging. As far as the CDI system goes, we ended up putting a banjing on here. I happen to have one that was out of the box and it happened to be blue, so we matched the color scheme and everything. So we made a little mount and mounted it down here on a swing arm. Probably my favorite ignition system going as far as, for two reasons. A, the wiring gets to be a lot simpler because I don't have to run like 5 wires to a CDI and then run the 2 wires out to the coil. There's basically 3 wires coming off this thing, so it makes the wiring so much simpler. I literally wired this in probably about an hour, hour and a half, completely wired with the box and everything. So it just simplifies things for me as far as performance. I just feel ignition performance wise, it's the best thing I've come across. It's not adjustable, it's just basically straightforward. It's got a microchip, it has a little microchip processor in there. It is basically, in a dumb way, you could say it's self-thinking, but it advances the curves with the RPMs and everything. More so than any other CDI that I've looked at with the timing gun on a motor, which gives me an idea for another video. We had actually done it in the shop and charted it all, but I'm thinking that in the future that we will take a timing gun and test some CDIs. Not necessarily to tell you which one is better or best or whatever, but just to show you. I know there's always been an argument with CDIs, you know, some do, you know, what do they do besides kill the rev limiter and this and that and the other thing? But there are different timing curves to every CDI. Some have no curve at all. Some are basically at idle, what they are at 5,000-6,000 RPM. Some actually curve with the RPMs. And that's, in my mind, that's what you're looking for. Why? Because this one did it. And so the more curve that you get with the RPM, it just makes sense that your timing is actually advancing or retarding compared to what the motor is doing. Fuel tank mount, we just kind of incorporated it into the cage. And the last thing was we put a 530 chain from Firepower on here. And the reason why I use Firepower chain, besides the fact that I'm a dealer, but I mean I have access to many chain companies. The reason why I like Firepower, especially for our machines, for our buggies, is that all the Firepower chains are made in Japan, where the best chains are made. So it's not a Chinese chain. It's made in Japan. It's basically made in the same factory as, and I'm not going to say which companies, because a lot of companies, like, you know, they don't want it out there. But the high dollar name brand chain, that chain is made in the same factory by the same people. So what I like about it is the price is right for what you're getting. So as far as the buggy site, and I know everybody is very price conscious or whatever, a lot of people do all their shopping on Amazon, but for the money, bang for the buck, I don't think there's a better chain out there, better quality chain than Firepower. So last but not least, I'm trying to think of the last thing, we'll roll it back, bring the camera over here, this is what we've been using for most of our MBX buggies, and it just seems like a perfect fit. Pro Armor harnesses. These are basically the same harnesses you would buy and replace for your Razor and whatnot. Pro Armor is a great company, reputable. Why I started using these harnesses myself, I used to actually use like racing straps, you know, from stock cars. And they're kind of uncomfortable. Don't recommend ever using a 3-inch strap in one of these buggies. I used to use it in a stock car, and that was just so I could go to work on Monday morning in case the worst happened. You know, you want to be strapped in a stock car, but 3-inch harnesses get to be very uncomfortable because they're wider and they're right across your chest, and they tend to, after a while, they tend to kind of, the edges kind of start cutting into whatever you're wearing or whatever, and you can kind of feel it. Not literally cutting, but it's just an uncomfortable feeling. 2-inch harness is the way to go, especially with these things. What's nice about the Pro Armor is built-in pads. They're very comfortable. They're not incredibly hard to adjust. They're much better than the OEM buggy harnesses, which are just a catastrophe trying to get them adjusted right. So they're quick adjust, quick release, very comfortable. Price-wise, I mean, it's the same thing as buying good helmets or cheap helmets. How much is your safety worth? But they usually retail for anywhere between $100 to $120 a seat for the harnesses. But if you compare to the stock buggy harness, you're almost talking about the same money, about 50 bucks a seat. So it's about twice the money of maybe your OEM buggy harnesses. But for the comfort, ease of adjustment, and safety, I would definitely, twice the money is not such a big deal. So that's it. I think we covered all the bases. So unfortunately, it probably won't be at Dave this week. I'm trying to convince him to make the last race at Lazy, because apparently Lazy is probably going to be a double header, because we had a race cancel on us this year. So we're probably going to run 2 rounds at one track on the same weekend. So I'm hoping I'd like to see it perform. I'm hoping he makes it for the Lazy race, and I mean that'd be kind of cool. I think it turned out really, for a simple build and whatnot, real clean build, and that's what I like about it. And that's the key word. It's clean. It's not overdone. It's not underdone. It's got all the stuff that counts. It looks good, but you know, we don't have light bars and goofy stuff hanging off of it and everything. It's just a really clean build. I think the thing that clutters it up the most are the harnesses, because when we first installed the seats and took a look back, it's like, man, that thing just looks clean. It just looks blue and solid. But you know, gotta have the harnesses. You don't want to be flying out. But all in all, I think it's pretty cool looking build. Pretty happy with it. I usually go through builds hating on them and say, oh, this is ugly, this and yeah. But then somehow, some way, when it's all said and done and everything comes together, I tend to like them a lot more, I guess. Just like anybody else with a project, when it's finished, it's a lot better than in the throes of it. So that's it for now. Glad I could share this with you. If you need parts, go to gotbuggies.com. If you're liking the videos, hit the like button. If you haven't already, subscribe. I will have to get something together for Tennessee. I actually didn't take the camera up the last time out. Basically took a bunch of pictures and whatnot. And you would think 2-week trip I would have taken a camera, but we were so busy, got so much done. It just wasn't, you know, I didn't want to stop doing what I was doing. You know, when progress is going on, you don't want to stop. So I'm headed up there in probably about 2 weeks. We're taking a week to go ride in West Virginia, and then we're going to stop on the way back, because it doesn't make sense to be that close and not stop and probably put in a week of work there, in which case I will try to make it mandatory that I get something put together for content to kind of show you what's going on up there, because it is getting exciting now, and we're not even close. I mean, I look and I say to myself, got so much done, and then I look over there and I'm like, there's so much yet to do. But it's coming along, and I'm very happy with the outcome so far. So that's it for now. Till the next video. Thanks a lot, guys. Shady's out.